Good evening, and welcome to a Fireside Chat with Zany Mystic. My name is Lance White, and I am the Zany Mystic and your host. Tonight's guest is Beverly Ann Wilson. Beverly is the owner of Mount Shasta's Middle Earth, the Crystal Room. During a trip to Mount Shasta last year with a friend, Liz Millar, we were fortunate to be able to spend time with Beverly, who shared her vast knowledge, experience, and wisdom about the crystalline worlds. Tonight is part one of a two-part show devoted to learning about crystals and the shifts in consciousness that we all share. I don't want to waste too much time talking about Beverly because we have the live, real person here, so let's welcome her to the show now. Hi, Beverly. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Well, let's just dive into this and find out what you can share with us about crystals. And as I understand it, they are living entities and beings that communicate with us. Am I close to?
No, absolutely. And actually, that's quantum physics.
Okay.
They're living consciousness. The way quantum physics kind of came about was they were trying to test Newton's law that if you set something in a straight line, that it will it'll set an energy in a direct line. It'll put you to keep going in a straight line. And so they created the accelerator to test it, and it was a totally vacuum-controlled environment with precision impulse and equipment to make sure the direction was exactly the same. And no matter how many times they did it, sometimes it was actually almost 90 degrees. There was a bell curve of a possibility of what direction it would go, but nonetheless, they couldn't determine which way it would go. And then they later found that if, as somebody doing the experiment, they could be interactive with it. And so anyway, basically, they were forced to say that the smallest level of particulate matter could choose.
Okay.
And with that, they also had to say that smallest form of particulate matter forms itself in everything we know in the physical dynamics, whether it's a constellation or the table or the chair that we're sitting in or the phone that we're talking on. And that was the beginning of kind of what they call jumping down the rabbit hole. So the indigenous cultures have known and recognized and honored the living consciousness of crystals and minerals. They've been involved in all kinds of ceremonies and healings and participated in rituals and gridding. And science finally caught up with us, and now we all know that it's living consciousness. I can't remember when you were here if the big crystal was still here.
I don't remember that.
Well, there was a big crystal, and we used to take the resonance as an exact frequency match in science, in physics. Well, we used to take a bowl, a rose quartz bowl, that this big, huge 3,500 quartz cluster really resonated with. And you could actually, there were anybody, not just me, you could actually see it respond. Some people saw it getting brighter or lighter. Some people saw it deepening. Some people saw it actually breathing.
Wow.
And other people saw other things as its response to the toning of the crystal singing bowl.
I've had I'm in a healing group, and one of the people who's in the group says that she sees. We were talking about crystals on the internet, and apparently she has visuals that were projected from the crystals. I guess she called it divas, but she was able to see life forms. I've never seen that. I've had situations where I've looked into them with a magnifying glass and seemed to perceive things in a different world. but I guess we all tune into them in our own unique ways.
Well, we each have our gifts of receiving. It's really interesting. Usually, whatever way the gift is, we always think it'd be neater to do it the other way.
Exactly. Yeah.
But honestly and truly, there are spirits of form and divas that work with all the levels of consciousness on the earth, and certainly the spirits of form that work with the crystalline structures are alive and kicking.
Well, I know when I walked into that back room, those were
Lemurian seed crystals,
yes.
Right?
Oh my goodness, that was an amazing experience. Would you like to talk a little bit about those in particular? And also, you must have Atlantean crystals as well, huh?
Yes. The Lemurian crystals, calling them Lemurians is kind of like calling me a mother. I'm definitely one, and my son is like 36, and so it is. I'd probably be more dominantly a grandmother right now than I would be a mother, because it's definitely my joy and my heart's there. They were strip mining in Brazil, and they came upon a whole field of crystals that were just laying in the sand. So they're ripping away the earth, and all of a sudden they come upon this layer that has thousands of crystals just laying there. They weren't mined; they were found, and they it was a phenomena. They stopped everything, because it was literally a phenomena, and they determined that they were placed there at the end of the age of Lemuria, when we were still in unity, one with Source consciousness, to hold that consciousness for the earth and the mineral kingdom while we separated out. Because while we separated out, everything had to slow down so we could. So they were placed where the crystals were going to be growing to act as master teachers for the earth and the mineral kingdom through the millennia, where we individuated until we could get to a point where we could remember, yes, we're individual aspects of Source, and we're one with all that is. And at that point in time, they would be found to act as co-partners with us as we raise our frequency. Gaia raises her frequency back toward unity, one with Source, without losing our individuation. And so they have encoded information in them. They're really quite amazingly wonderful, and we were given the stewardship of them when Gina sent them to us.
That's wonderful. So that must indicate that tells me that we're at a point where we're ready to find these.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're kind of like in a the itch. Well, it's not even that. We're in the middle of everything, choosing the direction it's going to go. And to me, it is. It's very positive, and a lot of people find really wonderful reinforcement and help within the crystal kingdom. My husband, who doesn't really recognize any of this, as it's not in his worldview, actually, because he sees people change and react, and the experience they get when they get together with one of their crystals, actually wrote what he calls without being pejorative, because he doesn't mean it pejoratively, he calls it the redneck's explanation for crystal magnetism, because he says even anyone can understand it. And it really he came into writing it out of his need to find some explanation that wasn't esoteric, that would give him satisfaction of what he was describing, what he was seeing on a daily basis.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we experience it daily. We ask highest use, highest good for the person and the crystal. The crystal gets to choose how it's used, because we look upon the living consciousness that it is as important as ours.
And I remember you saying something to the effect that basically that the crystal chooses the person.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people just walk in, and you can see that they're in awe. Well, I was in awe for one thing. And the deeper you go into the various rooms, the more you start to just kind of get enveloped in this wonderful energy that is throughout the whole store. It's just fantastic.
Well, I think the reason it's because we honor the crystal kingdom and the mineral kingdom in a way that allows them their path and the recognition of their work as really as ours. Mm-hmm. We've kind of, a part of moving into unity one with source consciousness isn't just on a human basis. It's everything in the creative whole is evolving and moving toward its more than, and no one thing is more important than the other.
And we tend to think that we're it. We're the top.
Oh yeah, we're absolutely convinced we're it. It's like when we used to think that the sun revolved around. That all of the constellations and stars and universe revolved around the Earth.
Right.
Well, we've never quite lost that with us.
You're right. You're right about that one. And of course, before then, the Earth was flat. So.
Right. Exactly.
So, I just had somebody say something about astrology being a ridiculous thing to study, kind of like it was, tantamount to UFOs and ETs. But anyway, back to crystals. You mentioned that there are crystals that are Atlantean. Now, what about crystals that are from the stars? Are stars?
Oh, absolutely. Even within whatever kind of crystal.
Yeah.
There are crystals that work with the planets, the solar systems, the galaxies, the universes. Some crystals work with the angelic kingdoms. Some work with what, for lack of a better word, I call interdimensional.
Okay.
And interdimensional is kind of like when you go from one state to another, or one country or another, mm-hmm. like California to Oregon. Mm-hmm. Everything is defined within California by and within its borders. Mm. Everything's defined by and within Oregon's borders. You go out of California into Oregon, but in the middle, you're not in Oregon, you're not in California.
Yeah.
And that's literally called a null zone, N-U-L-L.
Okay.
And it's all potential. Oh. It's not the void, it's literally all potential. And everything in all that is able to individuate and differentiate through the null zone of all potential.
Wow.
As we grow, we draw from it.
Uh-huh.
Nebulas, it doesn't matter. I mean, everything, dimensions, no matter how gossamer the energy is, the differentiation is allowed through the null zone of all potential.
Wow. And so do the crystals act as intermediaries for us, or are we able to draw from? How does it work?
Okay. We've looked upon. We go back and forth. Up until now, we've kind of gone back and forth with crystals as either a way of accessing, a way of processing, or a way of owning. That there's something to own.
Uh-huh.
Well, first of all, it's like when the indigenous people said you can't own the earth.
Right.
There is no consciousness you can own.
Right.
And so they can co-partner with us, and they can assist us. But really and truly, as we take on the responsibility of our individual aspect of source, we walk hand in hand as equals with whatever part of creation we're working with.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
But because we're especially culturally, and we've been taught to look outside of ourselves from the answers instead of inside.
Yeah.
And so as we do that, we don't have a point of reference.
Yeah, Absolutely right. So, what? How do you begin to determine, whether the crystal is an experience that you need to have, or?
Well, a lot of times people just automatically are drawn to them, but a lot of times what I do, first of all, if somebody comes in and when I'm working with people, I usually use dowsing rods because it's really important to me that they know it's not about me.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So and they have some kind of outward sign. All right.
Yeah, I remember that.
Right, but we usually teach people how to use their body to get their body yes and body no, and ultimately encourage the person to find the crystal themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because in grounding into the crystalline structure of the earth, connecting to your source self, and then basically using something that you know is flat out yes, like your name.
Okay.
So my name is Beverly. Show me yes, and then just letting your mind go, and not trying to just see what listen to the body and see what direction your body goes. Mm. You can make the intention, if you want to make it simple, of just having to either be a forward or backward motion, or you can literally see what the body does. Okay, so so if I were doing my name is Beverly, show me yes, and I'd see what happens with my yes goes forward. That's mine, but everybody's different. And then something I know is flat out no. Like, I'm in New York, show me no. Okay? And I know I'm not in New York, so my body could do an easy no. Once I have my yes and no, then it not only makes shopping a breeze, but as we align with our in my worldview, as we align with our individual aspect of source, we can't look outside of ourselves. We have to go in.
Yeah.
And this is the person connecting with their individual aspect of source, getting their inner body knowing guidance. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's how we have people choose their crystals. Mm. Or if it's a large group and like we have people come from all over the world, I just spent an entire day with some French Canadians, and we douse the crystal and then tell them about it. I don't do people, but I do crystals. Uh-huh. And if a crystal chooses a person as its resonance, then which is exact frequency match, then it's an unbelievable reflection of the person as well as the crystal itself.
You must see a lot of light bulbs going off when that does happen.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable the experiences that people get when they're really with a crystal that is resonant with themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most incredibly wonderful sacred things I do.
Well, I remember when Liz was working on the bowls, and you were asking the various questions, and there were a couple that were not resonating with her, and the ones that did, there was a definite yes. I mean, I could see it.
No, exactly, you do.
You could feel it. Even I could feel it, and I'm not the one that was doing the resonating. So it was a fascinating process.
Well, and again, in my worldview, the more we really tune in and ask for that kind of guidance and live it, the more each. What happens with resonance is it's because it's an exact sine wave match. Every time it goes around, it builds on itself, and we demonstrate here that with crystals, that, so I've got a big crystal and it's facing in its direction of empowerment and it's demonstrating resonance. If I move it, say halfway in a half circle, a quarter of the circle, it'll show it elliptical and it doesn't grow. And if I move it opposite the direction of its empowerment, it literally stops because part of it's trying to go one way, the other's part's trying to go the other. Oh. And we've all had those days we could barely get out of bed, And we've all had those days where absolutely everything was magic and fell into place effortlessly. the days it's magic, we're in resonance. We're going in the direction we need to go.
Yeah.
The days we can't get out of bed, we're flat out not going where we're supposed to go.
Yeah. Yeah. We sure know that feeling.
And crystals literally demonstrate it.
Yeah.
We use a pendulum over it, and you can see the pendulum. I've got my arm on a counter, so it's obviously that I'm not moving it in any way, shape, and form.
Right.
And all I do is move the crystal, and the crystal, it changes the movement of the pendulum.
Huh, interesting. As you've been doing this, what are some of the things that you have surprised you when you've learned about them? Do they teach you as you go, or?
Oh, they did, especially crystals and bowls. And when I'm working with crystals with people, there are times where I'm absolutely just moved almost to tears by the depth of revelation that I experience through them. And with the bowls are their living consciousness that's vibrational, and so you're taking the consciousness of the crystal or mineral with the transmittive qualities of the crystal in a structured context, because the bowl has two firings in it. It's structured crystal, and amplifying it through sound and vibration, and which we're perfect receptors for. We're water and molecular consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Now, you tell us a little bit about the bowls, and I remember you explaining that they're actually designed to the Fibonacci sequence.
No, there are some bowls. The round bottom bowls are literally it's a patented centrifugal mold, and the mold is created with the Fibonacci sequence.
Oh, okay.
And depending on the size of the bowl, obviously the mold changes. The sequence continues, though. It's the exact same sequence. When it gets to the size of the diameter, then it just goes up. Okay? So we have the classic holographics, which I'm madly in love with, because the classic bowls have a bigger sine wave, and they're more universal, and they impact the body in a really wonderful, strong way. So you can actually feel the multidimensionality of it's cellularly amazing. The alchemy bowls are fired at a higher temperature, so they have a tighter molecular structure, and they have a smaller sine wave, so they don't have the physical impact. But either way, as much as the classic holographic bowls, but you can physically experience, especially with the classics, the dimensional shifts that as it broadens with the round bottom rather than the flat bottom bowls. We have a gold bowl it's a Fibonacci sequence that's 24 karat gold bonded with it, and that demonstrates the holographic aspect of the Fibonacci sequence.
Wow.
Yeah, and then there's the practitioners, which have handles that work with the subtle bodies, and there's the flat bottom, which you can put on somebody's body while you're working with them. So, I mean, for everything you gain, you lose something. For everything you lose, you gain something. Each one has its use, and it really depends on the practitioner's or the individual's choice of use. And again, we use the person's higher self to help determine that, because it has a much broader range of information than we do, just like living it here.
Yeah, absolutely. I would guess that you have a lot of healers that work with crystals that come to.
We do. We have people call from all over the world in the United States, actually, and we work really hard to have as many of the different kinds of mineral types in the mineral kingdom as we can. There's always more, God knows, but we really try to have a range of tools that are available. of consciousnesses. I'm not just talking about whether it's a massage tool or not. I'm just talking about the types of crystals and minerals and what they do. And we have wonderful people that work here that help people all the time. It's really a joy to walk hand in hand with the people that I get to live with and play with, and whether it's the minerals or the bowls or the people I'm actually with on a daily basis.
Yeah, I would think so. And then being there in Mount Shasta is such a magical place.
It's a hard place not to be thankful. Between the water and the air and the energy, but it's a volcano. I mean, it puts you through your paces. I mean, things are always coming up. But if there isn't a button, it doesn't get pushed. So when something comes up, I always say, "Thank you very much for reminding me I'm choosing this," and move in the direction that of my clearest expression of my individual aspect of Source. And I mean, the crystals are perfect, wonderful examples for us because they are it. Each one of them is there. It's a structured, embodied consciousness that can only be its clearest, wonderful self, unless we muck it up. And actually, and I know there's lots of different ways of clearing and lots of different ways of that are taught of cleaning, but I honestly find intention is everything. Mm-hmm. And so I use I use the violet flame to clear and cleanse, but because not all crystals can be, crystals for the most can, but there's a lot of minerals that will react with water or whatever, and some of the way crystals, like the ones that have a sand matrix, dissolve if you put it in water.
Oh, geez.
So I use but you can I blaze it with a clearing fire. And then I charge it with cosmic gold and its essence colors. We don't have to know the essence colors. The crystal knows its essence colors. We can give the intention that it receive. And cosmic gold, the easiest thing I can tell you about cosmic gold, if you go out in the sun if you have a watch or whatever piece of jewelry or any kind of gold that isn't matted, there's this shimmer, the absolute amazing shimmer that the sun reflects away from it's away from the gold, whatever it is, and that's the closest I can get you to cosmic gold. So I charge it with cosmic gold and its essence colors after energetically clearing it.
Oh. And that's using the violet flame technique.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it works for me, but I mean, I could do it just by, like, for instance, any energy that you want to dispel. If you first of all neutralize it so it can't get away, and then the RNA and DNA are code kind of identity code words, no matter, not just with us, but any level of consciousness. So I just, first of all, I neutralize it, and then I demand that the RNA and DNA be removed and not be allowed to return. To clear it. That's another way of doing it.
Okay. I did not know that. Now, in some of the books that I've read in the past, they mentioned that there are certain special crystals that are, and they mentioned they're record keepers, and then there are teacher crystals, and there's a whole litany of...
Absolutely. Probably one of the best books on that is Patricia Troyer's Crystal Personalities. Okay. And they're like badges, like merit badges. The different faces, that's actually what when I read a crystal for a person, I'm literally telling them what the crystal embodies as a reflection of the work that it does. And so once you find out what the crystal does, I mean the major accent of its work, then it has like if you think of like Melody has a really in the beginning of her book, she has a an interesting page on numerology, on the master numbers.
Okay.
So if you think of so then I want to know the scope of it. What is the ramifications of it? So I find that out. Then what frequency does it work with? Because each it's like music intervals.
Okay.
Each music interval is a world in its own right.
Uh-huh.
So a second, if I were to use my body and my trunk was like C or the root, okay, then the second would be going to my shoulder.
Okay.
It would just be that far. Okay. So I want anyway. So the I want to know. So I just want to know what extent work it does, and then what frequency it works with.
Okay.
So, and then after that, I look at its merit badges, if you will, or if there's beings that you can see inside. It's a teacher crystal. I mean, there's double terminated. Every single one of them is a consciousness that they have grown into embodiment.
Uh-huh. And so each one has its own distinct
characteristics within the work, just like we do.
Yeah, where we would have personality. Well, personality isn't a very good example.
No, exactly.
Is it?
There are. I mean, there are some crystals. Like for the Lemurians, we make pouches for them because I was told I was supposed to. Okay. There are some crystals that are just like Goldilocks. I swear to God. You end up making like 2 or 3 before it's really happy and saying, "Okay, yeah, I like that one."
You're kidding.
No, I'm not.
Oh my goodness.
It's hysterical.
Oh my goodness. So they can be kind of temperamental.
Well, temperamental, they're just like everybody else, They're if they've got a high level of exactness in their consciousness, then they're not like somebody who could care less.
Right. No.
So that one you could say, okay, there's a little bit of room, but it's all right. The other one go, I don't think so.
It's so funny. I love it.
It is funny, especially if you're busy and you want to have it done. But you just I say, okay, fine, and I make another one.
So what is the most unusual thing that a crystal has put you through?
Oh, wow. Now, that's an interesting question. The most unusual thing a crystal has put me through. We could save that one for next week, and I can figure it out, because that will take me a little while to go on that one. But I promise you I'll answer that next week.
All right. I'll make a note about that.
Okay. I will, too.
And next week we're going to be talking a little bit. We're going to get into the shifts in consciousness, and I'm assuming that we're going to talk a little bit about the 2012 phenomenon. And
absolutely.
Good.
There is a crystal that's just come out that's just, as we get to a point where we can receive their consciousnesses, they come. And there's speculation that there's probably, just like, think of we use 10% of our brain with our 5 senses, and all the rest are what we haven't tapped into yet, what we're tapping into.
Right.
Okay, so that's true of the mineral kingdom, too.
So
we have yet to really, it doesn't do any good to have it come out if you can't use it.
Oh, right.
If our conscious, they've waited for, not every aspect of creation has waited, millennia for us to get to a point where we are now. Because now we have the ability to align in a consciousness. In Emerald, the Emerald Bowl. Emerald taught me a lot. The Emerald Bowl taught me a lot about emerald. Thoth's tablets were emerald.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's right.
At that point in time, the consciousness of man was 2-dimensional. That's why everything is drawn in the hieroglyphics two-dimensionally. The only ones that are facing forward are the depths, the pharaohs, and the gods. Everything else was 2-dimensional. And that's facing forward 3-dimensionally. We don't think anything at this point in time I mean, third dimension has been ho-hum for a really long time.
Yeah.
And now we think about, you can go to the nth dimension microscopically as well as macroscopically.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so in that sense, we're beyond what is represented in the hieroglyphics for the pharaohs.
Wow. Well, that's pretty intense. Although they had more skilled knowledge and information, didn't they, about communicating with the cosmos than we do?
Well, yes, and there are lots there were more receptive to receiving from other dimensions and other aspects of the universe.
Right.
Each round we've gone, the furthest away from the sun is like the Dark Ages, and right now we're entering the photon belt. So we're receiving an enormous amount of frequency. Everything is escalated. I mean, everybody experiences it. There's no way of getting around it. Whether it's positive or negative is the intent and the consciousness with which we receive it.
Right.
It's the same thing either way.
Right. And so, as far as you can tell, the cycles that have occurred before, we've never reached this level.
It's like a spiral.
Yeah.
And so it is. It isn't that they didn't reach unbelievable and really in some ways beyond where we are.
Right.
But it wasn't as a whole world.
Right.
See, what happened is it went from one area to another area to another, each different cultural consciousness.
Yeah. And this is the first time when
it's world conscious.
That's right.
And Gaia, at this point, has done her job enough where she can definitely work on her ascension too.
Well, that's what as I understand it, that she's about to ascend to the next.
Well, and really, what is that? As we do it, it's an energetic consciousness shift.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Pierre J. Chardin, years and years ago, talked about the Earth becoming the sun, the spiritual sun. As we take on as each one of us takes on our individual aspect of Source, we create a unified field of consciousness that is whole as well as individual.
So we're retaining our individuality and also raising and merging and expanding into the whole as well.
Totally, it's like a drop of water from the ocean. It pulls out. It knows its individuality as a drop of water. It returns to the ocean and is part of the whole, knows it's part of the whole, but doesn't lose the individuality of it, of its experience.
Well, I think that's one of the things that makes people so afraid of death is that they're concerned. We're all concerned about losing that individuality.
But see, that's an illusion.
Right.
I mean, it's like. Both my parents, in my dad in December and my mom in May. I had the wonderful opportunity of participating in their crossing over, and it is my mom. We were literally cheerleading over, giving her litanies of all the people that were on the other side waiting for her, because she was ready to go. She needed to go, but she had this huge will that wasn't quite ready to let go.
Yeah.
And it's all frequency. How we live it, whether it's in this density or in another level, it's the same consciousness. It's just a different expression of it, in my worldview.
Okay, and so when the body separates from spirit, which is the driving force behind the body, then it's the separation out of the different densities, as I understand it.
Exactly, but if I live my life to the level that my dad did, where I can glow to the absolute, radiate in the casket, although I'm going to be cremated, so it won't happen. Where his cellular consciousness still radiated long after his spirit had left. That's doing your job.
Wow. Well, almost all spiritual disciplines and ancient texts talk about the illuminated ones.
Totally.
And that we're returning to an illumination and a crystalline consciousness, which should technically give us a more ethereal quality and a lightness of being, assuming that that's what's happening.
Well, one of my favorite stories is about these two little angels that are up in heaven, and one of them's thinking about coming down and incarnating, and it really wants to take on this really huge task, and it's trying to find some group of consciousnesses, or at least one that will hold the space for it to be the place where it can go through this huge thing.
Okay.
And it's been looking around. It's complaining to its best friend that it just can't do it. Nobody will do it, and it wants to take on this so badly, and he just can't get anybody to do it. And so his little friend finally says, all right, I'll do it. But you have to promise me something. He says, what? He says, you have to promise me that you'll try to remember it's me, because if you don't remember and I don't remember, who knows how long we'll be down there.
Yeah, amen to that one. Wow. And that's the game. It's the memory game, isn't it? We've forgotten who we are, and we're just in the process of trying to remember.
Exactly, and for me, that's probably one of the biggest gifts of the bowls, is because the vibrational, it's the person experiencing it's you experiencing you, and we're used to thinking of our body as something we have to keep healthy, and it carries our head.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we're more than a universe of molecular consciousness.
Yeah.
And we're not just this physical consciousness.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things when I'm working with the crystals, when we're talking about the consciousnesses of the crystal span, I don't care how expanded it is. I'll ask them what they do, and it fits with what the crystal does. It's just this expression here.
Wow.
And it can be as simple or as complex. It does, it is our being the best we can be in the moment we're in, and staying in the now and not getting lost in the future or the past is our work. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Anything else, the expression of how that is, whether it's the simplest or the most, seemingly glamorous or who knows what, is trappings.
Yeah.
Of that actually sometimes make us not aware of how important each second's choice is.
I like that. I've often said that it doesn't really matter what we're doing, that we're all, that some person, in the New Age movement, a lot of people look up to certain other people that seem to know it all. And it's not necessarily that way. We all have that information. We all have our own higher information.
I've got this one of my favorite songs I've been singing in Enormous a lot lately. It's in every one of us. It's in every one of us to be wise. Find your heart. Open up all your eyes. We can all know everything without ever knowing why. It's in every one of us to be wise.
I like that one.
and I don't know, when you get involved, and it's learning to listen. We don't know how. It's learning to listen with our bodies. It's learning to listen beyond just the limitations of the physical senses, and it's learning more than anything else to trust ourselves. And when people get their body yes and their body no, and they start paying and they ask what we do, highest use, highest good. Why not have whatever you're doing or whatever you're getting or whatever you're buying be on that level?
Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely makes sense.
And it's a surrender. It's a handing over to that part of you that knows an enormous amount more. Our minds are used to thinking in our pyramidal society that they're top dog, but we have every single part of who we are is a teacher, and our least refined parts are why we came. The most refined parts we had together before we got here.
Yeah. And a lot of us have had soul journeys in other incarnations.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. I mean, I've often thought it in various times that anybody that's in our life is probably, the repeats in our lives is probably somebody that we've been there before with.
Absolutely, and then we also lots of times contract with different members of our soul group.
Right.
And so that's why we meet people that seem so familiar, and there are people that we may not be with for years and years and years, and you get back together with, and it's just like you've never been away.
Yeah.
Because we have lifetimes together.
Yeah.
That's again my worldview.
Do you think is it confusing to think that a consciousness like human consciousness would incarnate into a crystalline form? How does it work? I mean,
I don't. I think we can have parallel lives and parallel consciousness choices. I think if that happened, it would have been the other way.
Yeah.
That the life force consciousness of crystals they have a consciousness that spans such an enormous length of time. Yeah. I can't imagine them being interested in being a human.
It would be like a blink of an eye.
Exactly. Not even, a nanosecond.
Yeah, it would be like, boom, and it's over. See, what was that all about?
Like a flash, like a camera flash.
Yeah.
And would you repeat that again? Excuse me. I think I missed it.
And yet, sometimes this lifetime seems like it's going on a very long time.
Well, I think because, in a sense, how many hands do you need to count all the lifetimes you've been this time?
Well, one. Yeah.
Well, even and not only that, when you think about it, in consciousness evolution, you used to have to go to a place which held a mystery school, and you stayed there as you learned all the mysteries, all the lessons of that mystery school.
Oh, that's
and then if you wanted to learn something else, you went to a completely different place.
That's right.
Well, now you turn the television on, and it clicks from one whole
dimension.
Lesson to another lesson another lesson.
Yeah. Some of them not lessons that you want to repeat.
Well, no, and not only that, some of them I don't even want to take in. Why would I take in that energy?
That's right.
I don't watch. It took me 45 minutes to regain my depth perception after Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh.
Seriously, my physiological depth perception.
Huh.
So I don't watch things that are that I have flashbacks for months on.
Yeah. Do you read the newspapers and things like that, or do you get your?
What I do most of the time is my husband reads it all the time, so I mean, I can. He keeps me up to date.
Okay.
But what I do is I try and just, well, for one thing, I work 7 days a week.
Busy.
So I mean, it's like I have a lot of things to do.
Right.
But
Right.
I try to just pay attention to the moment I'm in, be the best I can be, knowing that is the best I can give to the world in what it is today.
Yeah.
Because if enough of us do that, again, this is coming from my worldview.
Okay.
If enough of us do that, the frequency that we send out throughout the planet shifts. It's the 100 monkey. It's the whole 100 monkey consciousness that shifts.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that 100th monkey effect has happened, or is it an ongoing thing? Do you think?
I think we're always moving to the more than.
Yeah. Yeah.
It isn't a static reality.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm sensing too. And yet, it seems like there has to be a moment when the light bulb goes off, or and all the monkeys get it.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Tee-hee. In the meantime, I'm going to stay focused on my part.
Well, yeah, right.
And because that's the only one I can be responsible for.
That's right.
So, and not only that, what appears to be catastrophic emotionally, whether it's a situation with a person or a world situation or even a supernova explosion, has an enormous amount of repercussions that aren't necessarily negative. And for me, if I can learn from it and grow from it, then even my worst has merit.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything is a mirror, and it teaches us.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, it's not uncommon knowledge that our worst lessons or our best lessons often come from our hardest hardships.
Totally.
So
yeah, and it's also true that if we choose, we don't necessarily have to perpetuate it to get it.
Right, absolutely. And the faster you get the lesson in the moment, the quicker you can move out of that into the next.
Right, and the thing is, if for me, if I get it in the moment I'm in, it doesn't have to build to it shouting at me.
Right. I call that the moment when I get hit over the head with a brick.
Right, exactly.
Oh, geez. So tell me a little bit about, do some of these crystals talk about the times of Atlantis? I mean, do you ever get...
Right, they'll hold, Atlantean consciousness was, and I guess I can describe it as much more, well, for lack of a better word, mental and linear.
Okay.
Lemurian consciousness holds unity, one with source consciousness, which is pure divine love. There's different minerals. Michael Grein, Geinger, and that's not quite the right spelling. Anyway, he wrote crystal healing, crystal powers. He's a scientist, a healer, and a teacher.
Okay.
And he goes into the properties of the igneous, sedimentary, metamorphic rocks.
Wow.
He goes into the properties of the element, the elemental chart, the elements that are involved with creating the crystals that the crystal consciousnesses draw from to put together their consciousness.
Wow.
He goes into the crystalline structures themselves, and the one I love about that is he talks about the cubic lifestyle, the hexagonal lifestyle, and how we reflect it.
Oh,
and he goes into what it means to add color vibration, and then he has a chapter on what it means to with the crystals or minerals with the chakras.
Oh, wow.
And then he goes, she says, okay, now you've got all that. What do you do with it? So then he goes into applications, including the American Indian Medicine Wheel and the Chinese. I love it when my mind goes. The Chinese.
Their form of the medicine.
Yeah, their form of medicine. Thanks. And
I knew what you were going to say.
Good. And then he has the most amazing, incredible color photos and descriptions, the mineralogical aspects again, and mythology through time, and the physical, mental, spiritual applications, and the how to use it, and what it's good for. Then you think there couldn't possibly be anything else, and he has the common names and what they're really called. Wow. And then he has just the most incredible therapeutic index, like blood pressure. It'll see also circulation, raising, lowering, stabilizing, and it has different minerals that are good for any one of those. It's just an incredible resource.
And that's called Healing Crystal Power?
It's Crystal Healing Crystal Power.
Okay, good. Beverly, you won't believe this, but we're just about at the end of the show now. Can you believe how quickly that went by?
It was quick.
Would you please share with the listeners where people can find your site on the Internet and how to reach you? Sure.
It's Crystals, Crystals, Mount Shasta, MTSHASTA.com. And our email is crystals@crystalsmountshasta.com. And we're at 109 West Castle Street, Mount Shasta 96067. There's 7+ rooms that just keep going. And
it's amazing. It's just, believe me, you can't even begin to describe how awesome this shop is. Beverly, thank you for being with us tonight, and we'll talk to you again for part 2 next week when we get into the shift and the 2012 material and whatever else comes our way.
Okay, look forward to it.
Wonderful. Thanks a million.
Many blessings.
You too. And good night, everybody, and good night, Beverly.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.